Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Flow podcast. I'm Amy.
And I'm Jake. Thank you so much for tuning in today, wherever you are listening or watching from. We are diving straight into a topic that, let's be honest, touches every single aspect of our lives. Whether we're talking about learning a new language, starting a business, getting fit, or just getting out of bed on a rainy Tuesday morning.
Motivation.
Motivation. The magical, elusive fuel that we all wish we had an endless supply of.
It really is elusive, isn't it? I was actually thinking about this just this morning, Jake. People always ask us, especially with language learning, since this is the English Flow podcast, how do you stay motivated for months or even years? And the funny thing is, my honest answer, which sometimes shocks people, is that you shouldn't rely on motivation at all.
Whoa. Starting the podcast by telling people to throw motivation out the window? That's a bold move, Amy. Explain yourself. What do you mean we shouldn't rely on it?
Well, think about it. How many times have you felt super motivated to do something? Like, let's say, joining a gym on January 1st, or buying a brand new grammar textbook with high hopes. And then 2 weeks later, that feeling completely vanishes. Motivation is an emotion, right? It comes and goes, just like happiness, sadness, or excitement. If you wait until you feel like doing something hard, you're probably going to be waiting a very long time.
That is such a valid point. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are notoriously unreliable. They change with the weather, how much sleep you got, what you ate for breakfast, and whether your favorite team won or lost last night. So if motivation isn't the answer, what is? What actually keeps people going when the initial excitement wears off?
Systems and habits. I know it sounds a little bit less romantic than finding your inner fire, but hear me out. When you build a system where an action becomes automatic, you don't need to negotiate with yourself anymore. You don't wake up and ask, do I feel like studying English today? You just brush your teeth, drink your coffee, and do your 10 minutes of listening practice. Because it's just what you do. It's part of your identity.
I love that distinction. Moving away from a temporary emotional state and moving toward an identity-based habit. But let's be real for a second. Because even when you have good habits, there are days, weeks even, where the slump hits hard. You feel completely burnt out, uninspired, and nothing seems fun. How do we deal with those moments when the system itself feels heavy?
That's when you need to shrink the goal. This is my absolute favorite trick for beating procrastination and low motivation. If your normal routine is to study for an hour and you look at that textbook and feel your soul leave your body, you tell yourself, fine, I'm only going to open the book for 2 minutes. If I want to close it after 2 minutes, I have full permission to quit.
The classic 2-minute rule. And the trick is that starting is usually the hardest part, right? Once you actually open the book and read one sentence, the friction disappears, and you end up studying for 20 minutes.
Exactly, because physics applies to human behavior too. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Friction is the enemy of motivation. If you have to dig your textbook out from the bottom of your backpack, find a pen, clear your desk, and look up a login password, your brain is going to find a million reasons to do something easier, like scroll through social media instead.
So we need to lower the barrier to entry, make the good habits as easy and accessible as possible, and make the bad habits, like distractions, as difficult as possible. If my phone is sitting right next to my hand while I'm trying to work or study, I've already lost the battle. My brain is going to choose the path of least resistance every single time.
Totally. Environment design is so underrated. We tend to think that people who achieve great things, whether it's mastering a second language, writing a book, or running a marathon, have an unbreakable willpower. But research actually shows that the most successful people aren't the ones with the most self-control. They're just the ones who set up their environments so they don't need to use self-control.
That takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? Because if you've ever beaten yourself up for lacking willpower, you realize it wasn't a personal moral failing. You were just fighting a bad environment or relying too much on that fickle emotion we call motivation.
Oh, absolutely. Stop blaming your character and start looking at your design. But aside from environment and systems, there's another huge piece of the motivation puzzle, and that's why you are doing something in the first place. Your core motivation, your purpose. If your why isn't strong enough, no system in the world is going to save you when things get genuinely difficult.
Give us an example. What do you mean by a weak why versus a strong why?
Well, take language learning, since that's what a lot of our listeners are focusing on. If your why is, I want to learn English because, well, I guess it would look nice on my resume, or someone told me I should, that's a pretty weak anchor. When you're tired after a long day at work and you have to choose between relaxing and listening to a podcast in English, looking nice on a resume isn't going to pull you off the couch.
Right. That's an external, abstract motivation. It doesn't carry any emotional weight.
Exactly. Contrast that with a strong why. What if your why is, I want to be able to talk directly to my colleagues in New York without feeling anxious? Or, I want to travel the world independently and make friends from different cultures? Or even, I want to prove to myself that I can master something difficult because I've always doubted my intelligence. Those reasons have a pulse. They make you feel something.
Those are deep, and they connect right back to your personal identity and your life goals. When you have a deep emotional connection to the outcome, the daily grind, the boring grammar exercises, the vocabulary flashcards, the moments where you don't understand native speakers because they're talking too fast, those struggles suddenly feel worth it because you know what they are building toward.
They become meaningful friction instead of meaningless annoyance. But even with a great why and a solid system, burnout is real. Have you ever experienced a time in your life, Jake, where you lost your motivation completely and had to claw your way back?
Oh, absolutely. A couple of years ago, I hit a massive creative wall. I was working on multiple projects, trying to push through every single day without taking proper breaks, and I just burned out. I woke up one morning and literally felt nothing toward my work. No passion, no excitement, just absolute emptiness. And the worst part was, the more I tried to force myself to work, the worse I felt.
How did you get out of it? Because I think a lot of people panic when that happens. They think, this is it? I've lost my spark forever.
I had to learn the hard way that rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's an essential part of it. I had to step away completely for a few days. No screens, no podcasts, no planning, just walking in nature, reading fiction, sleeping, and letting my brain recover. We treat our minds like machines, expecting them to run at full speed 24/7 without ever needing maintenance. But we're biological creatures. We need downtime to process, integrate, and recharge.
That is such an important reminder, especially for high achievers or people who are very ambitious with their English goals. They think that studying 7 days a week, 4 hours a day is the fastest way to fluency. But often, that leads to mental exhaustion, and then they end up quitting for 3 months because they're so burned out. Consistency beats intensity every single day of the week.
Consistency over intensity. That's a phrase worth writing down. If you study for 20 minutes every single day for a year, you are going to go so much further than someone who studies for 5 hours on Sunday, burns out, and doesn't touch the book again for a month.
Plus, sustainability is key. When you make learning manageable, it feels good. And when something feels good, your brain releases dopamine, which actually reinforces the habit loop. It makes you want to return to it tomorrow. But if you turn your life into a strict, miserable boot camp, your brain is going to naturally try to escape from it.
It's like tricking your brain into enjoying the process rather than just focusing on the final destination. Speaking of destinations, a lot of people lose their motivation because they focus exclusively on the end goal. Like, I want to be fluent in English. And since fluency takes years, the goal feels so far away that every time they look up, they get discouraged by how much farther they have to go.
Oh, the gap versus gain mindset. Have you heard of that concept?
Tell our listeners about it because it's brilliant.
Well, if you measure your progress against your ideal future self, the person who speaks fluent English with zero accent and a massive vocabulary, you will always feel like you are failing because that ideal keeps moving. That's the gap. You're looking at the distance between where you are and where you want to be, and it feels depressing.
Right, because you're constantly highlighting what you don't know yet.
Exactly. But if you measure yourself against where you were 6 months ago, the gain, you realize how far you've actually come. 6 months ago, maybe you couldn't understand podcasts at all. Now you're listening to a full conversation in natural English and following along easily. That is massive progress. But we forget to celebrate those milestones because we're so obsessed with the final finish line.
That shift in perspective changes everything. It turns motivation from a feeling of, I'm not good enough yet, into, look how much I've learned. I wonder what I can learn next. It turns the journey into a game instead of a chore.
A game. Yes. We talk about this with language learners all the time. If you treat English as a school subject that you have to pass tests in, it's going to feel heavy and stressful. But if you treat it as a tool to explore the world, to watch movies, read interesting books, talk to fascinating people online, discover new music, then motivation stops being an issue because you're actually enjoying your life while you learn.
You're scratching an itch of curiosity. Curiosity is a much more reliable fuel than discipline, honestly. Discipline feels like pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. Curiosity feels like opening a door to see what's in the next room.
I love that imagery. Let's talk about another trap that kills motivation: comparison. Oh man, social media is the absolute worst for this. You open Instagram or YouTube and you see someone claiming, I became fluent in 3 months using this one weird trick, or how I mastered 3 languages while working a full-time job and running a marathon.
And you're sitting there in your sweatpants, struggling to remember the past tense of irregular verbs, feeling like a total failure.
Right. Why am I so slow? What's wrong with me? We compare our behind-the-scenes blooper reel to everyone else's highlight reel. Those flashy online claims are either heavily exaggerated or the person had a unique circumstance, like living immersed in the country or studying full-time for 8 hours a day. When we compare ourselves to unrealistic benchmarks, our motivation plummets because we feel defeated before we even start.
It's the thief of joy, for real. The only person you should be competing with is the person you were yesterday. Are you slightly better, slightly more informed, or a little more comfortable with your mistakes than you were a month ago? If the answer is yes, you are winning, no matter how fast or slow someone else's journey looks.
Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about the fear of failure, because that's another massive motivation killer. A lot of people lose their drive not because they're lazy, but because they're terrified of looking foolish. If you're learning English and you're afraid of making a grammar mistake or mispronouncing a word or having someone ask you to repeat yourself, your brain treats that social risk like physical danger. And what does your brain do when it perceives danger?
It makes you want to run away or hide. It tells you, don't speak up in the meeting. Don't write that comment online. Just stay quiet and safe.
Exactly. And staying safe feels like a lack of motivation, but it's actually disguised fear. You aren't unmotivated. You're just protecting your ego. Unpacking that can be a game changer. When you realize that every single mistake is just data, It's just feedback showing you what to tweak next. Mistakes stop being painful and start becoming interesting.
That is such a healthy reframing. Mistakes aren't evidence that you're bad at something. They are proof that you are actively trying and pushing your boundaries. If you're not making mistakes, it means you're staying entirely inside your comfort zone, which means you aren't growing.
Preach, Jake! Comfort zones are cozy, but nothing ever grows there. It's like a greenhouse, safe, warm, but ultimately nothing wild and beautiful happens until you break through the glass.
So let's recap some of these practical strategies for our listeners who might be sitting there thinking, okay, I hear you. I want to stay motivated, but what are the concrete steps I can take starting today?
Step 1, stop waiting to feel like doing it. Acknowledge that motivation is an unreliable emotion, and instead focus on building simple, repeatable habits and systems.
Step 2, lower the barrier to entry. Shrink your goals on the hard days. Use the 2-minute rule. Open the book, write 1 sentence, listen to 1 minute of a podcast. Remove the friction from your environment so it's easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing.
Step 3, connect with your deep why. Make sure your reasons for doing what you're doing are personal, emotional, and meaningful to you, not just generic checkboxes on a list.
Step 4, embrace rest and avoid burnout. Remember that downtime is part of the process. If you push yourself until you break, you aren't being productive, you're just sabotaging your long-term consistency.
Step 5, shift from the gap to the gain. Measure your progress against your past self, not against some impossible ideal or someone else's highlight reel online. Celebrate the small wins along the way.
And step 6, kill the perfectionism and embrace mistakes as data. Don't let the fear of looking foolish paralyze your progress. Every error is just a stepping stone on the path to mastery.
I love that list. It feels actionable, realistic, and kind. Because at the end of the day, self-improvement shouldn't feel like a punishment. It should feel like an investment in the person you want to become.
Well said, Amy. We would love to hear from all of you listening right now. What is one trick or habit that helps you stay motivated when things get tough? Drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube or reach out to us on our socials. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the English Flow podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and share it with a friend who might need a little motivation boost today.
Keep practicing, keep growing, and keep your English flowing. We will see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.